You're listening to the Ontos Podcast, where we explore the nature of stories and the pursuit of being in truth. I'm Maq.
And I'm Vaud.
And our sentience depends on you. Now cue the intro music. He shall defend their ways, yet shall violate them. He shall be their savior, yet they shall call him heretic. His name shall be discord, yet they shall love him for it.
So chapter 7, we are picking up where we left off with Kelsier and Marsh talking to each other, having excused everyone. During this time, Vin decides she's going to be a sneaky Vin and try to listen in and observe what's going on between the two brothers. And let me tell you, it's pretty heated. Mm-hmm. Marsh comes in swinging, and in my opinion, swinging in a pretty brutal manner. He hands them, he's like, here's a list, by the way. He's like, what's this little list of? He's like, oh, all the people you killed, attacking Venture, the people I knew, the people who had families. And Kelsier's like, well, they're noblemen, or they serve noblemen, so they deserve to die. And Marsh is pretty upset. He is really mad, and I think it kind of plays off in the beginning like he's mad at Kelsier for killing these people, but I don't even think that's it. I think he's mad that Kelsier is in a way trying to hijack his what used to be his dream. We learn that Marsh used to be the leader of the Skull Rebellion, and he put that down. Mm-hmm. And Marsh is mad because Kelsier has like this sudden shift of priorities that just seem to come out of nowhere to him. Because before he was explaining how Kelsier, he goes like, while I was trying to help people not starve to death, you were living a life of luxury that you stole from people. While I was trying to fight and make a difference, you were taking advantage of this and making money with it. And you can see that he definitely does not think highly of Kelsier at this point, and believes that he's just hijacking the Skull Rebellion essentially for some petty reason himself. And Kelsier, March kind of points out, it has to be revenge. And Kelsier's like, you don't really know why I'm doing this. Like, he goes, you know me well, but you've never been good at knowing why I do the things I do. And Marsh kind of concedes that point. And you get this moment between them where Marsh, just in a set of brutal honesty, tells Kelsier that he wish Mare would have survived the pits and not him. And Kelsier agrees with him, and that's when Marsh finally sees, like, oh, we are both kind of on the same page, and he's more willing to believe. He goes, I know, Kelsier, you're doing this for a selfish reason, but I'm sure now it's not the money. It's not good, but I can see that some good possibly could come out of this, so I'm willing to come back and listen to your crazy plan. And that was essentially the conversation between the two, and Kelsier makes a note that Marsh is a better man than he could ever be. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where that conversation's left. And Kelsier, at the very end of it, notices this blue line extending to the door, and notes that, somebody, Vin, hasn't learned to not carry medals yet. And so he catches her spying on them. And he goes down to her place and knocks on her door. And she's trying to act all disheveled and like mess up her hair and act like she was sleeping. And she answers it. And he's just like, I caught you. Just admit it. And Vin's like, no. And he goes, really? And she's like, okay. Yeah, you got me. And Kelsier decides that based on seeing that, it's a good night to go teach baby Mistborn. And so that's what they plan on doing. Kelsier takes her up, gives her a mist cloak, which is pretty cool, and some metal to ingest, and she does. And he takes her out on their first training expedition. He walks through essentially step by step what the metals do. Another thing he mentions that I kind of noticed on the read through was like Reen's voice in the back of her head has told her consistently that she doesn't want to be ladylike. Yet Kelsier specifically goes like, hey, half messing with her, but half being serious. Hey, when you're ready, we can get you like a dress. Like we can like, being ladylike has its bonuses. Like you can use that and to your advantage, and it could be helpful to you. And I think that kind of stood out to me with this because I was like, oh, this is kind of, we kind of see our clashing of mentors here in this sense. Like Kelsier is supposed to be the person she's going to be learning to be a Mistborn from, and he's saying do this, and Reen's training in the back of her head saying no, don't do this.
And she even said like, oh, his voice keeps coming back to me. It's worse ever since I met Kelsier.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it shows a pretty big clash. But yeah, he goes, hey, we're going to be learning now what all the different metals do, but first you need to know something. This is ours. The night, the mist, they belong to us. Everyone fears them, but we're not going to. And you need to get that through your head right now. That needs to be the first big thing here. He said, he even goes as far to say, like, then the mist are your friends, they're going to protect you. And I really think he's kind of trying to push into her here that, like, she needs to let go of, like, the normal Ska thinking when it comes to the nighttime. And really know that she's a person with power now. Because I think up to this point, he's noticed she's strong, but she doesn't realize it yet. She doesn't realize her station, her status with these abilities that she has. And he discusses with her how it's good because we need to when we wear the mist cloaks, if guards see us, they're going to ignore us. It's not right for them to think that Mistborn has to be some noble person. So it's not good etiquette for them to even try to notice them. They'll just pretend like we're not even here. And with that, they take off and he starts teaching her. He teaches her that she feels she has 8 sources of power inside of her. And he teaches her that each of those sources has a pull and a push. And so she starts with pewter. And she notices that it's making her react more quickly. And he goes, yep, that's you pushing your body. You're burning pewter, you're pushing your body. It's going to give your body strength. It's going to make your bones, your skin, everything tougher. You're going to react quicker. You're going to heal quicker. You're going to ignore pain easier and things like that. And he goes through to its, he mentions that it burns very quickly, which we kind of already knew from his fight scene. But he specifically mentions that it's going to burn more quickly, and he mentions flaring here. And flaring is when you burn metals at an extended rate or really fast all at once, and you get like a burst of whatever ability that you're getting from the metal. And also he mentions exactly what burning is. I know I've been asking that. He mentions that burning is just what they call activating the allomantic metal. That's all that is. And so on this topic of burning, he describes to Vin that you have to burn allomantic metals that are pure. You need to burn metals that were made for allomancers because they have to be made in a very specific way. If they're made wrong, you get an entire range of things that come from, hey, you get a little bit of power to you're sick. You're going to be sick if you burn something that isn't correct.
And it can be deadly.
Yeah, and it can be deadly. But essentially, he continues to go through the metals. You get bronze, which is, if you're a bronze misting, you are considered a seeker. Bronze lets you detect allomancy around you or detect people who use it. He talks about how copper can create a copper cloud, essentially, and it's like bronze people who are sensing allomancy, it blocks their ability to sense allomancy in that cloud. And for the person creating the cloud, they can't be affected by emotional allomancy, which we kind of learn, when Clubs left, Kelsier offhandedly mentioned, you can't be affected by Breeze. And he's like, I know. Now we know, like 100% for sure. When Clubs or Vin or whoever's burning copper, emotional allomancy can't even bother them. But it doesn't protect those around her, is what he said. It says it will hide them, but it will not protect them from emotional allomancy. And he talks more. He goes in, he tells her, hey, we're going to hold off on steel and iron pushing for a little bit. He doesn't say those words at that point, but he says, we're going to hold off on these, and tries to just tries to talk to her about consequences before he does this. And kind of tries to quiz her, there are people who burn pewter who die from their wounds after the fight because they ignore wounds that are too bad for a person to handle.
Yeah, it wears off and you're basically a normal person.
Yeah, and
with the same wound.
Yeah, and I think he yells at her or something that scares her. He's just like,
yeah, he goes, ah.
Yeah, when you're burning tin, which I don't think I mentioned, when you're burning tin, all your senses are amplified. And so he yells and catches her really off guard and hurts her ears. And he's like, yeah, so when you have extended senses, right, that can be a big disadvantage. You have consequences for doing these things. And you need to understand these because she disobeys them pretty quickly. And she ends up trying to use steel and iron early without his training, and she almost impales herself with a little screw. And he's like, this is what I was trying to say. This is consequences, right? What happens when you push on something, and if you're heavier than it, right, it's going to fly away from you. If it's heavier than you, you're going to fly away from it. When you pull on something, if it's heavier than you, you're going to pull to it. If you're heavier, you're going to pull it to you. Everything's about consequences, and you need to understand that because iron and steel are going to be your two best weapons, your two best tools in your kit if you can master them. And then he says, let's jump on this wall. And they jump on the wall, and that's where we're left with chapter 7, which, again, it's kind of big here, right? Like, this chapter had so much information on the magic system. Like, we've got like a pretty much like a Wikipedia page here.
It's a pretty comprehensive, explanation of allomancy, and I think it's really good. And what I love is that it's still only like scratching the surface because you're like, okay, here's the idea, for everything. And in later chapters, we're going to get some really interesting minutia, the details that go into it. But one of the things I really picked up on was, Vin, we learn a lot more. I guess learn a lot more. We really get to see like the levels of her paranoia because she keeps watching Kelsey and she keeps going, he's tricking me. He's hiding something from me. He's not telling me something.
Yeah,
and around every corner, he's like, if you would just listen to me, you wouldn't hurt yourself.
Yeah, again, it's kind of like you mentioned. It's the clashing ideologies here, right? Like, Rin was like, you can't trust anyone. You can't do anything like that. And Kelsey's like, listen, no, you need to trust me. I'm just here to help you. I'm trying to make stuff as easy as possible for you.
Which you wonder, like, is the next foot gonna drop, and Kelsey or betray her or something or what? But right now, this was a pretty comical, chapter because it's just he kept saying something and she's just like, yeah, I think you're gonna hold something back. You're gonna hide something. Oh, that must have been the most powerful metal. That's why you didn't tell me about it. You told me to stop going away from it, as though he didn't just hand her the metal, like.
She technically wasn't wrong. It's like the most useful of her abilities that she's learned up to that point.
Yeah.
In his own words,
yes.
It's the most useful.
And I mean,
but he wasn't keeping it from her.
But the other thing is, we find out is stars. This is the first time we get stars mentioned.
Yeah, because it's so misty and everything.
Misty and ash, right? So he's like, you never even usually see them. And the other thing is that like with 10. She's able to feel everything. She could feel her clothes on her.
We think back to the prologue, when we were having that discussion, Kelsey uses 10 in the prologue to hear the girl scream. So he also specifically mentions, he's like, man, I'm, 15, 20 feet, whatever it is, away from this fire, and it feels like I'm right next to it.
Right.
So, like, yeah, your senses get really amplified.
So, and that's kind of the interesting thing is now that we hear about these powers, you can see them get like jumbled down here, here and there about like, your senses go up, your strength goes up, your durability goes up. And then you get like, we remember how Cayman got like thrown across the room, and now we know why, because the metal's on his body.
He pushed him.
So we're starting to kind of get some of the pieces come together about like, oh yeah, when we saw them do these things, it's like pulling the curtain back a little bit to say, oh, here's how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, Vin mentions before she burns pewter, oh, it feels like I've used this one before. And I just think back to the fight with Cayman when she has that like last bit of surge of strength where she said she felt like the pain just went away and then it all came flooding back. I was like, oh, that must have been pewter.
Yep.
I think Kelsey even mentions like, oh, you could have gotten trace pewter because like what you eat with could have been made out of it.
Yeah, the cups or or the utensils could be made of pewter.
And I want to just take a moment that already the consistency that Brandon Sanderson has with like making everything just make sense. Like you said, like these little things that you can go back and check even at this point and stuff is so fun.
You know the funny,
he's consistent.
There was a funny little continuity thing here that I went like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you even thought about that. She drinks the vial and she actually says, the power that she had, she has 8 different forms of power, and they were way more than she had ever had before, even when he had given vial before. And you were like, why would she have more power now? You know, from pewter or whatever, or the zinc I think she had than she had before. Well, because she had Kelsier drink half of it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So this is literally the first time she's had a full vial ever.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just a little detail, but I just loved it. I loved
Yeah.
that little piece of continuity.
I mean, it's things, right? Like I think we said when we talked about discussing the Cosmere in the beginning, if you want to just read this as like a casual read through, these little things, they're not super important to notice, but like, you know, diving into it and trying to find every little thing, it's fun to know that on this small of a scale, Brandon's showing his consistency with his writing. I just wanted to mention that real fast.
Yeah, I thought it was
This
great.
is not the episode for those discussions. So I just wanted to mention
No, it's a cool little detail, and that's what we're here for. Here's the thing I wanted to mention about Kelsier. Last episode, you were talking about Kelsier, and how it was interesting that he kind of gave some of those Ska a pass by betraying him. But in this chapter, he says, if they want to stand against me like noblemen, they can die like noblemen.
Yeah, again, it's just flipped randomly.
Well, I don't know if it's random or if it's part of his character that he just kind of, and this is a very human thing to do, I want to do these things, therefore I just justify it. And his beliefs shift a bit.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I mean, you could argue that, oh, well, these Ska, if they agree to fight for me, then I'm willing to let them go or whatever. But the other guys, they weren't willing to fight for me, so I'm willing to let them die.
Another thought I had on this was like, what if it's, you know, that was a way for Brandon to show his respect for Ham? Because these are Ham's people. So even though he has this ideology, if Ham vouches for them, they're off limits for him.
No, maybe it could be. It could be a bit of that. I also thought Marsh was he's Kelsier's brother. We've had him name dropped a couple times. This is our first real time of seeing him.
Yeah, Kelsier wants him to spy on the Steel Ministry, which I apologize. I don't think I mentioned that in my review, but like that's what he wants him to do. That's crazy.
Well, that's what we mentioned in the previous episode. We mentioned that his job was going to be going to the Steel Ministry, and Kelsier just gets lit up by Marsh. You know, Marsh high roads him really hard. But I mean, very understandable.
What is that though? Because Marsh mentions that he wishes Mare survived. Like, is that insinuating like a love triangle? Is that what that's supposed to be?
I mean, I don't know. We'll see, but I kind of doubt it. Because if you think about everything we know about Mare and Kelsier, and them, is that they all were probably pretty tight friends. You know. Yeah. And so I'm sure this is more of a hint of like Marsh was a part of this group, you know, very intimately involved with this group, and he's had a falling out probably since Kelsier got captured.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if he's a part of the group, because if you look at it, it sounds like he hated the group for what it was.
True, that it could be true. Well, but you would think that if he's probably somewhat close to Kelsier. Oh, I don't know. He's probably not very close to Kelsier. Maybe you might be right onto something there. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if that isn't the case, I would assume that it's just because maybe it's one of those situations where like Mare made Kelsier a better person. So maybe like he tempered Kelsier out, and so he was like, maybe in Marsh's eyes, it's like, well, with her gone, you're a worst version of yourself. So it would have been better if like she made it out rather than you.
Well, talking about Brandon's writing, you know, in this sense is I never noticed this until literally just now. You know, we talked about earlier how the Lord Ruler and, you know, the journal entries seem really, really to conflict, because like the journal entries seem to be from a pretty chill dude. The Lord Ruler doesn't sound like a very chill dude at all. Kelsier at the same time, also we see him get like respect, but like it sounds like he had like maybe a pretty rough history. Like he at least according to Marsh, he was like, he just wanted everything for himself. He was just kind of out for things for himself. You know, he never, and Marsh was sitting here trying to actually do what Kelsier sounds like he's trying to do now. And it sounds like Kelsier was never really interested in that. And now Kelsier he doesn't even correct him. Kelsier doesn't even at one point say, I was never like that, you're wrong, you don't remember that correctly. So we got to think it's probably accurate. So this is kind of a thing. We hear one thing about someone, we're seeing a different thing from them. Kelsier seems like this kind of pretty honorable guy, at least when he's like around certain people, but he also, kills people, and says, that's perfectly fine. He's like, we'll be forgiving. But then he's also like, yeah, I'm not going to forgive these people because they're standing against me. He's saying, I really want to save the Ska and I really want to overthrow the Final Empire. But he at least has a very strong history of being like, actually, I just want to get as wealthy and taken up as I can.
Or in this case, I want to kill the Lord Ruler.
Which, understandable. So, could he be... This is a nice complex character. I mean, this is something that Brandon's very good at.
Come for the story, stay for the Brandon's characters.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those things that if you ask Kelsier in this chapter, if you were able to pull him out of the book and ask him himself, he wouldn't be able to give you a good answer. Because in his mind, he's probably thinking, yes, I am a good dude. Yes, I am all these things, but I'm going to get my revenge. And what am I willing to give up to get it?
Hey guys, Vaud here. Thanks for listening to the Ontos podcast. You'll start to see regularly scheduled episodes starting November 14th, 2022. And if you'd really like to follow us, please consider subscribing. We're a very small project, so please support us with likes and comments, because that's what the algorithm craves. If you're listening on the YouTube channel, please hit the notification bell. And if you want to really give us a boost, consider supporting us on Patreon, because I really need to better my English.